ladies and gentlemen, I now want to introduce one of the most important concepts in all of chemistry. The concept is that of the mole. It's so important that I very often say that the mole is a central idea in chemistry. Now, what is a mole? Well, I'm going to first give you a definition that's correct, but doesn't really explain to you what a mole is. But the first definition I'm going to give you is that a mole is a number. It's a very specific number, and it's made up for a very specific reason. A mole is Avogadro's number of something. And Avogadro's number, to 4 significant figures, is 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd. So when I say a mole, I just mean this number. You can think of it like a dozen. A dozen is 12. It's a number. A dozen donuts is 12 donuts. A dozen eggs is 12 eggs. A mole of beryllium atoms is 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd beryllium atoms. A mole of oxygen atoms is 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd oxygen atoms. So you now know that a mole is a number, but you really still don't understand what a mole is, the true definition. Why would anybody make up this weird number and give it a special name? To help explain that, I'm going to give you another definition for a mole. You'll see it written here. I'm going to say it in a minute. But I want you to notice there's an asterisk up here because this is not really the definition of a mole. So what I'm about to tell you is not quite true. But I think it will help you understand the concept. So here I've written that a mole is the number of protons and neutrons needed to make 1 gram. We can't count protons and neutrons, but often we would like to know how many are present. What we can do is we can weigh things. We can find their mass. Now, if I had a mole of protons, by this definition, a mole of protons would weigh 1 gram. A mole of neutrons would weigh 1 gram. I could make that measurement and then I would know how many moles I have. It turns out that that's not the strict definition. And the reason that's not the strict definition is that protons and neutrons, their mass can change slightly depending on how they're bound together in the nucleus. We talked about that before. We called that mass defect. So to give a strict definition, scientists picked one particular isotope. That isotope is carbon-12. The strict definition of a mole is the number of atoms of carbon-12 in exactly 12 grams of carbon-12. But I think a better way to understand it is to just think that a mole is the number of protons or neutrons in 1 gram. Let me now explain how that becomes useful. Let's say that we're dealing with a reaction in the lab and we're going to use some lithium. And let's say I want to know how many lithium atoms are present. Well, I can't count them, but I can weigh them. I can take their mass. So I can measure the mass of lithium atoms. But I want to be able to relate that mass to a number, to the number of moles. Now, our definition said a mole is the number of protons and neutrons are in a gram. If we look at the symbol for lithium, every lithium atom has 3 protons. And loosely speaking, on average, it has 6.941 protons and neutrons combined. So if I have a mole of lithium atoms, then I have 6.941 moles of protons and neutrons. And since 1 mole of protons and neutrons weighs a gram, 1 mole of lithium would weigh 6.941 grams. So 1 mole. And from here on out, instead of writing out mole, I'm going to use the abbreviation, which is MOL. I know it's not much of an abbreviation, but it's the abbreviation we use in chemistry. So 1 mole of lithium is 6.941 grams of lithium. We call this the molar mass. It tells us the mass of 1 mole. Now also remember that a mole is 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd. So this is 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd atoms of lithium. 1 mole of lithium is 6.941 grams of lithium. Then if we measure the mass of lithium, we can figure out how many moles are there or how many atoms are there. 4. Every beryllium atom has 4 protons. On average, loosely speaking, a beryllium atom has 9.01218 protons and neutrons. So let's say that I have a mole of beryllium. Well, that means I have 9.01218 moles of protons and neutrons, which means it has a mass of 9.01218 grams of beryllium. I now have a relationship that will allow me to take something that I